Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Nichelle Polston and Mark Eichman. It's high school football season, and in Smyrna, a change in the football program highlights a change in the way residents look at their town.
Changes in the way people look at violence brought a lot of people out in Wilmington on a recent Saturday. Can that message really make a difference? We'll talk to the city's police chief.
And First is in Dover, where 50 years ago, the dust-off helicopter pilots believed they were making a difference in the Vietnam War. We'll listen to their stories as they remember. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
A good football game can be like an intense novel. The strategy of the game can be the perfect plot. This is especially true for high school football. It can give a different personality to an entire town. Delaware education reporter Chris Barish is here with our first look. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Shirley. Once tiny Smyrna straddles Newcastle and Kent counties and has mushroomed into one of Delaware's largest municipalities. That growth has not only transformed this former agricultural town and its school district, but through football has brought a new sense of town pride. On a sunny December day in 2015, the once unthinkable dreams of a proud agricultural town came true. That's the day ever-expanding Smyrna High School played in its first Delaware Division I state football championship game.
I was sitting actually just on the edge of our student fan section, so I was up there cheering with them. Just so heartwarming to look up and down the bleachers and see what we love to call our sea of red there supporting our boys and our coaches.
Those fans witnessed one of the most dramatic climaxes in Delaware scholastic sports history. Smyrna's opponent, perennial powerhouse Salesianum, had fourth and goal from the 1-foot line in overtime. Smyrna was on the brink of glory or last-second defeat.
So it all came down to that stop. And, I was struggling to watch it, but I did watch it.
I can specifically remember just saying over and over again in my head, please let the underdog win. Please let the underdog win.
The moment was more than 3 decades in the making.
It was a sleepy little town, or set of towns between Smyrna and Clayton for a long time. And very unique, blue-collar, tough, hard-nosed people here, and they all work really hard. And when I was a kid, you go to the grocery store, it took 2-3 hours because your parents knew everybody.
But with annexation and development, Smyrna now has 11,400 residents, more than twice as many as 20 years ago. The population of its school district has ballooned to 36,000. Walmart has even built a mammoth distribution center in town.
Over the last couple decades, it's changed and morphed into, almost like turning into a rural suburban area. And we've had this influx of people coming from all over, even from, New Jersey and Philadelphia area.
I started here in 1979 as an ag science teacher. Taught all the local farm boys, and all this property that you see all around the school, we used to till that property.
We decided that moving out here, you get more for your money. Plus the venture of a good high school, a good education that was available, and the general area overall was more attracting to us.
Up here it's nice, everybody's friendly, and the atmosphere of the whole town, it's like everybody's one big family.
The school district now has 5,500 students, 60% more than in 2000, and 3 new schools. Renovations have nearly doubled Smyrna High's size, and the school has 1,500 students, 8th most in Delaware. There's a new library, science lab, and gym. The football field has artificial turf.
I don't know how to keep track of kids in there anymore. It used to be very easy when I first started, but it's a big school.
We graduated in the class of 1989. I believe our graduating class was somewhere around 160 students. I think at the time we probably offered 1, possibly 2 AP courses, and career pathways weren't even something that was in the conversation when you were talking about earning a diploma.
Today, Smyrna High is above the Delaware proficiency average in English and science, though it trails in math. But there are now 14 advanced placement courses and a similar number of career pathways. More graduates go to college.
They have a wide variety of curriculum choices here and all the AP stuff. So, in all areas, not just sports, but in everything, they're excelling.
It's a lot nicer, newer than the old school I had. Teaching is a lot more in depth. There's also more, there's more classes that I can choose from.
I've had really good teachers the past 4 years as well. I'm in the allied health pathway and also the early childhood pathway, so I want to be working in the medical field but with children as well.
You know who's the best, so yell S-H-S!
In sports, Smyrna has long been a wrestling power, but the population boom became the foundation of a football titan.
We felt with the bigger numbers that we were getting in the school, there's athletes out there. We had to get them out into the, out of the hallways, off the court, and come play with us.
When teacher Mike Judy became head coach in 2014, he inherited a 2-8 team, but Smyrna improved to 5-5 his first year. People like Tom Sayers, a former Smyrna linebacker who runs a jewelry store in the quaint downtown, began packing the stands.
Obviously everybody likes a winner, but that's not. It's more the kids. I mean, they're excited to play. They're celebrating every little thing each other does, and they're really rallying behind each other.
There's a lot of new folks around, but you can see from the crowd that's here tonight, everybody's here and supports the team.
In 2015, Smyrna lost only to Salesianum in a 76-56 shootout. When they met for the title 6 weeks later, the town came out in full force. Police and firefighters escorted the team bus to the town limits. Fans rode in a caravan to the University of Delaware Stadium.
You got up there and you saw the sea of red, and the whole visiting stand was full. There couldn't have been too many people left in town, I can tell you that.
Smyrna overcame a 14-point deficit to send the game into overtime. The exhausted teams lined up for the final play. Salesianum inches from victory. Coach Judy figured star running back Colby Reeder would get the call.
We had a kid, they made plays, and he shot the gap and got to Colby before the big athlete could get up to speed.
When he stopped him, I mean, the place just went nuts. Yeah. I was hugging people I'd never even met before.
The town celebrated for months. Bright red Smyrna Eagle clothing and gear hopped off the shelves. A billboard in town celebrated the triumph.
I don't know who's making and selling all the T-shirts and sweatshirts and hats, but you can't go anywhere without seeing somebody wearing some Smyrna football gear.
Last year, the team went undefeated, taking a second straight state title.
Hopefully we do it 3 times in a row, but, a lot's got to happen.
The Eagles have struggled early against tough competition, losing 2 of their first 3 games to neighboring Middletown and a top team from the Baltimore area. A playoff berth is still a possibility, but win or lose, the rise of Smyrna football and its ascendancy as a town is now part of Delaware lore.
Everybody from, if they're older, if they're younger, no matter what age, everybody comes and celebrates together, and it's just so cool to experience that.
Best part to me is that these kids really feel like they're giving something back to the community through their play, doing something that they love. These guys get to come out here and grind and work and go to battle with each other and make a town and a community feel unified.
This might sound corny, but it's so heartwarming to see people of so many different backgrounds become neighbors and rally around their school.
Yeah, it is heartwarming. But beyond football, Chris, how has Smyrna's growth helped its students, and is there a downside to all of that?
Well, the new developments and businesses have really boosted the tax base. And while some old-timers might wax poetically about the loss of farmland, there's still plenty left, and some of that land has been used to build the new schools.
Right.
At Smyrna High School, the academic opportunities have grown exponentially, as have the number of advanced placement scholars. But the big takeaway is, as you go around town, everybody just beams with pride about the town, the school district, and the football team. And you can't put a price tag on that. And that sea of red is really contagious.
All right, Chris, great story. Thank you so much. You can find this and other stories by Chris online at newsworks.org/Delaware.
A few weeks ago, the Westminster Presbyterian Church of Wilmington hosted a conference to look for solutions to solve Wilmington's violence problem. The keynote speaker, Father Greg Boyle, author of Tattoos on the Heart and founder of Homeboy Industries, a social enterprise business that hires former gang members, shared with attendees his organization's approach to removing barriers to reach violent offenders.
Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we have forgotten that we belong to each other. And how do we stand against forgetting that? How do we imagine a circle of compassion where there is no one left standing outside of it, not victim or perpetrator? How do we dismantle the barriers that exclude? How do each one of us find our way out to the margins? Because the truth of the matter is, if we go to the margins, look under your feet. They're getting erased because we all chose to stand there with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless. We chose to stand with those whose dignity has been denied and those whose burdens are more than they can bear. We're all called in our way, in our own particularity, to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, with the demonized, so that the demonizing will stop, and with the disposable, so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. No kinship, no peace. No kinship, no justice. No kinship, no equality.
Father Greg Boyle had a lot more to say at Westminster Presbyterian Church. You can see his comments on newsworks.org/Delaware. Joining us today are Wilmington Police Chief Robert Tracy and Michael Barbieri of the Delaware Coalition Against Violence. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start with you, Chief. There was one word at the event a few weeks ago that was mentioned by Reverend Greg Boyle, and it was the word kinship.
Yes.
Okay? He said, Mayor Mike Przicki's description of kinship, which was compassion for both victim and perpetrator, was spot on from a law enforcement perspective. Can you tell me, how does kinship fit into curbing crime?
Well, I believe it all starts with respect. And that's one thing that we always teach our officers. Treat people as you would like your family members to be treated. That goes a long way, because you treat people with dignity and respect, and that's returned in tenfold. I believe what Father Boyle was getting at, he used that word throughout his speech, kinship, and he wrapped it into everything that he talked about. And then Mayor Mike Przicki actually, in his opening remarks that Father Boyle actually addressed, talked about both perpetrators and both victims. You know, there has to be empathy for both, because what has caused something in that perpetrator's life to cause them to actually engage in violence, to be part of violence. And we got to find out those root causes and see if we can get them the help that they need. Arresting your way out of the problem is not the way to go. Well, you know, we've had great success in some of our crime fighting, or actually crime reduction strategies, and we've arrested less people while we've made great strides in overall violent crime and overall crime. So you don't have to arrest everyone, but you also have to ensure that if there are people that are causing carnage in the community, if they're not going to heed warnings, that there is some consequence to make sure that we protect the community. Well, Michael, tell me, your organization aims to strengthen gun laws and address the root causes of why people turn to guns in the first place. Can you tell us, apart from getting guns off the streets and out of the wrong hands, can you tell us what can you do?
There's a reason a person turns to violence, and it's not just they woke up one morning and they think they want to shoot someone. You know, they may have been traumatized as a youth, they may have experienced violence throughout their entire life, and unless we try to rebuild some of that, unless we give these individuals options, they're going to be out causing problems. And you'll never arrest, because you'll arrest the first person and the second person will be right behind trying to take that. I mean, when you have a person say that they need to carry a gun for respect, well, that doesn't give you respect. That gives you fear, and fear is not respect. And again, so it's a whole reframing of things. How do we teach people? How do we give people options? And again, it's having, you know, as the chief has said, you know, police officers working in the community and understanding communities. It's having our education system understand that people are coming to them from different life circumstances, and we can't just suspend, and we can't just, you know, kick kids out of school. We have to work with kids, because without education, they have no future. So, I mean, I can go on forever, since this has been a passion of my life. So. Are you guys working together at all? We are not formally working together. I hope to be. I hope that we will. I would love to do whatever we can to support the police. I'm excited about some of the things we were talking about earlier with regard to working in the communities. I'd love to get more of the people who are with us, who work with us, to be out in the communities working, because, again, it was at an event we had on the 18th, it was said very clearly, these people don't need a bunch of white middle-class individuals telling them what they need to do. They need people out in the community who can help them, give them some food, help them find a job.
Is there anything in particular that Michael's organization can do that the police cannot do?
Well, I think with the help of, we talk about cognitive behavior, we talk about changing behavioral patterns that might have been learned that have led to the life of crime. I'm looking at ways to try to change that behavior by giving options. And those options are not choices, but options of more a voice of the community and those social services that I'll be looking for. Leaders like Michael, how can you help us as I move forward on the evidence-based policing strategies that we're going to be putting in place very soon in the city of Wilmington? That I've talked about that already with focused deterrence, group violence intervention, and these things are not about just arresting individuals. These are about getting them the help that they need and giving them options.
One thing is for sure, this is an issue that's going to require patience and collaboration from many stakeholders. Chief Tracy and Michael Barbieri, chair of the Delaware Coalition Against Violence, thanks so much for joining us.
Coming up, the story of the Dust-Off reunion. It's a Vietnam story that takes on new meaning 50 years later. And experience transportation of a different sort with the Delaware Seaside Railroad Club. Come aboard later on First.
This month, the Vietnam War has been on the minds of many, thanks to Ken Burns and Lynn Novick's documentary that's aired here on WHYY and around the country. This past weekend, a group of Vietnam veterans gathered in Delaware for their annual convention. Laughter and tears marked the reunion for these veterans who flew medical evacuation missions during the war. A group of 60 dust-off helicopter crews who flew in Vietnam gathered for their annual convention in Dover this weekend. On Saturday, they held a memorial service at the Kent County Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which features a Huey that flew rescue missions in Vietnam. The dust-off crews flew unarmed into the battle zone to rescue wounded soldiers.
We flew in adverse conditions. Our mission was to get them out of there. And one of our many mottos was no rationalization, no hesitation, no compromise, fly the mission.
The Vietnam veterans gather every year to share stories and remember their experiences.
I brought a lot of the photographs that I'd taken while I was over in Vietnam and my map that I used when we were over there. And it's just good reminiscing, talking about things and the good things that we did. And, you know, the crazy things that we did, and it's just great to get back and talk with each other.
A map sent to John Sabinosh while he was in Vietnam brought back lots of memories.
I signed that 46 years ago and saw it last year at the convention. So I was from Denver then, and I signed it, and I see all these other names of people that were there, and it's an extraordinary memory.
It was an emotional reunion for many.
I want to remember that because of something that I did, there's a Vietnam veteran that's still walking around today.
We were lucky. Everybody here was lucky. All of our friends weren't as lucky. We saw people do extraordinary things.
The dust-off crews weren't assigned their mission. They were all volunteers, and their work was particularly dangerous. Because they flew with the Red Cross emblazoned on their helicopters, they were not allowed to carry armaments to return fire from the enemy. More than 200 dust-off crew members died in Vietnam.
First person this week is slightly different because we have two guests in the studio. First, I'd like to introduce Eugene Young. You may remember his face. He ran for Wilmington mayor last year and is now the CEO of the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League. We also have Elizabeth Lockman, Director of PACE, short for Parent Advocacy, Council for Education. Welcome.
Thank you.
I struggled with your name because I said she's affectionately known as Tizzy.
That's
so
right.
I did
Feel
not.
free to call me Tizzy.
Okay,
That's
okay. So, but I want to start off with you, Eugene. Let's talk about your focus as the new CEO.
Wow. What a experience. About 2 weeks in a couple days. It's been really exciting. The main thing that we're working on is just fulfilling our mission, which is focused around this idea of working to support those of color and those who are most marginalized around issues of to help in regards to economic self-reliance, parity, power, and also civil rights. But we do that under this larger umbrella of advocacy and public policy.
On October 2nd, the National Urban League and local affiliates, of course, will launch a new education initiative called No Ceilings on Success. It's pretty much designed to address some institutional barriers. What are those?
When it comes to No Ceilings to Success, it talks about this greater idea of barriers like the glass ceiling that prohibits people from moving forward when it comes to education. And that can come with equity and quality teachers, also making sure that there's equity funding for schools in most need, and also finding ways to help people advocate around these issues that are nearest and dearest to them. So these are some of the things that we're working on, but we're working with, as I said earlier, like great organizations like PACE because they're already on the ground and doing this right now. And we understand that we have to have these common links between us if we really want to get any progress here in our state.
Okay. And Tizzy, working on things like how?
Well, so I'll tell you a little bit about PACE so you understand a little bit how we come at the issue. So PACE is an initiative at the Christina Cultural Arts Center. We're a long-standing community school of the arts in downtown Wilmington. And PACE as an initiative has been around for several years, and our approach to all the issues that Eugene has mentioned and then some is really about meeting the community where they are and helping them grow their skills as advocates. So that means making sure they understand all the different ways that the system works, or in some cases does not work particularly effectively to meet their needs as families in Wilmington. We go over it. We go over this is how funding works. This is how our schools are governed, and these are the ways that you can get organized and that you can participate fully in sort of that democratic process of public education.
What are you guys doing to train people to become advocates? Or how do you train people to become advocates?
You know, there's short-term and long-term ways to do that. With PACE, we have twice annual workshop cohorts that we call together in sort of the early fall and then the late winter, and we just do that on site at Christina. And it's kind of a fun fellowship support group in some ways, but then, you know, we give people an opportunity to think about their own stories as being educated, trying to get their children educated, but then also learn like the concrete stuff about just the way the system works.
Can you, just one of you, describe what the education climate is like here in Wilmington?
You know, we have a very fragmented, what's unique here is that our city is split across 4 school districts, so that's like 4 touch points of decision makers, even at the most local level. That's really difficult to contend with when you're, you know, just sort of a regular person trying to make sure that your school is effective. I mean, of course you can interact with your school, but that school board is making a lot of decisions. And so in Wilmington, you can move a block and go from one set of policies to some very different policies that could really trip up your child's educational trajectory. So that's something that's definitely unique.
And then what about you, Eugene?
What I would say is when you talk, it's such a big, broad question because it deals with everything from the child in the neighborhood of Wilmington that doesn't know how to choice into, the mother or father doesn't know how to choice into a good school district or school for them, to the funding issues that we have down in Dover when we're pulling funding from those who need it the most. So there's so much in between that scope. So we have a variety of issues to work on, but we need to make sure that we're continuously training people to be advocates and working collectively.
Okay. Well, that does it for First Person. Thank you so much, Eugene Young and Tizzy, also known as Elizabeth Lockman, Director of PACE. Best of luck with the initiative.
Model railroading has been going strong for generations. You may remember seeing these grand layouts as kids, or maybe you took your kids to see them. The Delaware Seaside Railroad Club is working to keep the hobby of model railroading alive for future generations. For our first experience this week, we show you their hobby and how they're keeping it alive.
My name is Bill Ziegler. I'm a member of the Delaware Seaside Railroad Club. The club's goal is to keep the hobby going and also to educate children about model railroading. This is a modular layout, and that means that we have 2-foot by 4-foot sections. The scenes behind are called dioramas. We have push buttons as you go along. The push button operates some accessory. It adds to the enjoyment. This theme is Trackside America, and we have 16 scenes that have a different place in the United States. I think trains have a history to themselves. Part of the problem today is people don't know anything about steam power or steam engines because they're all gone other than a few tourist things. The kids are not learning the electronics of trains, they're not learning construction, using their hands and figures and dexterity and all of that stuff. It's difficult to get them from a video game to track and electricity and trains. But with Thomas the Train, that's helped us a lot. When I was about 6 years old or so, I used to walk to the train station with my mother to meet my father, who was coming in on a train from the city. And in that case, that was a steam engine at that time. And when you're about this high, and the steam engine's about that high, and the wheel is this high on it, then you get excited about it. And just the noise and the thunder and the dirt and the soot and all of that was exciting. Most of the guys started with a train set when they were 4 or 5 or 6 years old, and then it went away, and usually in their 30s or 40s is when they start to come back to it. They have some time, their kids are growing up, and they want a hobby. We hope some percentage of the people that like it get encouraged to be in it, to get a train set for Christmas or for their birthday or just any time, and then work with it and play with it and enjoy it and add to the people in the hobby. Hopefully it will keep going for a long time.
Now, if you're watching this on Friday night, the Delaware Seaside Railroad Club will be hosting their Big Train and Toy Show on Saturday from 9 to 3 at the Roxana Firehouse. You can see more layouts at the club's clubhouse on Wednesdays and Saturdays all year long. Just go to their website, DelawareSeasideRailroadClub.com, for more information.
Next week on First, research at the University of Delaware has produced a new type of mobility for children with disabilities. It's all in the clothes, and we'll introduce you to the first class of the Veterans Watchmaker Initiative.
We're looking forward to those stories and a visit from Delaware Today magazine. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Shirley Min and Michelle Polston and Chris Barish, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.